A very good evening, a warm welcome to Dan Really Likes Wine, presented by Pick n Pay. Thank you for joining us on a day of great excitement for South African wine. Tim Atkin has released his report. It is an annual occurrence that is looked forward to with great excitement because Tim has become a fantastic cheerleader for South African wine and also issues the definitive report on the broader industry from abroad. I think Plato would still very much be the local definitive report, but from an international perspective, it is huge. And we remember just how much of an impact the 100-point Paul Sauer had. And now we've got 200 pointers, which means I've had about 3 dozen phone calls and twice that number of emails from people today. Dan, can you get hold of any of Kalilo's 2018 Porceleinberg or some of the 29 Skierfberg from Ibn Sadi? Those two being the 100 pointers. Both winemakers who we've had on Dan Really Likes Wine over the course of the last few weeks, and two winemakers who are both incredibly gifted and incredibly deserving of those 100 points. Some lovely scores across the board. I see Samantha O'Keefe and Lismore doing really well again. The Molyneux's having a good year. Loads and loads of them. And next week, we'll unpack those Tim Atkin results in just a little more detail. I'm really excited about all of that. And it's terrific to see South African wine showcased internationally, as it will be once again with the South African Wine Tribe. That's this week's weekly show, which is currently online, together with Joe Waring from Wines of South Africa and Greg Sherwood from Hanford Wines. We're looking forward to presenting another session of the South African Wine Tribe next Wednesday night, and that features J.C. Martin and his creation Sauvignon Blanc, Barine Sauls and her Tesselrasdal, her Pinot Noir, and we'll also be drinking something very special to wrap up, which I'm looking forward to, the Follow the Line from Duncan Savage, who was with us on the show just last week. So plenty to look forward to next week, but plenty to look forward to tonight as well, both in terms of eating, because a little later on I'll be heading out to Marble and trying David Higgs's menu for the second time in 2 weeks. Very indulgent, but I have missed it terribly. But also some absolutely fabulous wine to drink and some great stories to tell. I've got 2 almighty bottles of red, not just for what's inside, but outside as well. 2 large bottles that pack a fair clout. They both come from Boschendal, and Jacques, the winemaker, will be chatting to us not just about those 2, but about some really good Tim Atkin results just a little later. But we kick off with one of the most iconic names in South African wine, and dare I suggest in South Africa as well, because he's both an extraordinarily well-known and celebrated winemaker, but also one of the hardest men ever to play the game of rugby. There are people that he tackled in the 1960s who are still in hospital recovering 50, 60 years later. He's also a cheerful, smiling figure in the industry. He's always been wonderful to interact with whenever I've had the pleasure of tasting some of his wine. And he's joining us, but he's also joining us with his winemaker, who looks a little more like a surfer than a rugby player, but a sporting duo. The wine in question, as you might have guessed, is Vriesenhof. Nicky is the current winemaker, but the rugby player, and the man for, I think, Vriesenhof is best known, is Jan Boland Coetzee. So Team Vriesenhof, a very good evening. Welcome to Dan Really Likes Wine.
Evening, thank you for having us.
Hey, Dan, how's it?
I'm extremely good. It's great to see you both, and thank you for joining us on the show and talking through some terrific wine, which we're going to get to in just a moment. I'm very excited about trying it, but you've both got really cool stories around the wine industry and your involvement in it, and I think it's important to touch on those and introduce you properly to people who perhaps don't know the Vriesenhof story and your stories too well. Let's start off with yours, Jan Boland. We know you both as this extraordinarily talented rugby player who used to terrify opponents on a weekly basis, but also this wonderfully gifted winemaker. When did rugby and wine intersect? Did they work together? Which one came first? And how did you end up mixing them together?
Well, it was quite a job because as an ex-student of Stellenbosch farming in the area, we could play for the university. So I ended up playing for the Stellenbosch University Club for 17 seasons. So I was very, very lucky. I missed most probably 2 or 3 games. So I worked it out the other day, and between Mona and myself, I think we played 600 games for Stellenbosch. So it's quite a number.
It's an extraordinary record, and it's one that speaks to a very different rugby time when you could play rugby at club level and have a full-time job, and a very different world to the one that we find ourselves in now. When did you first step into the winemaking world? Was that pretty much as you finished your studies? Was that always what you were planning to do along with rugby?
I had 2 apprentice years at Simon's Vlei, 1966 and 1967, and I started my full-time job at Kanonkop in 1968. So that was the first vintage when I was on my own. And I must say, you've referred to the rugby now, but I can assure you, I recently read a very nice thing about wine, and it goes as follows. It's written by Tyser, a guy in New York. He says, wine is beauty. It needs room to breathe, time to confess, but the confession can never be the full truth. So hopefully we can bypass some of your questions by not having the full truth.
It's always a hallmark of Dan Really Likes Wine. We're quite flexible with that sort of thing. 1968, starting in Kanonkop. What was Nicky Claessens doing in 1968?
I was nothing but a wild dream. Huh? I don't think I was even featured anywhere. I was only born in 1980, so it's a long way away.
Which I did know, but the question is asked to just illustrate the bridge between 2 generations of winemaking that you have. What has it been like being under the wing, under the tutelage, and working with a winemaking legend like Jan?
Interesting. Like with any job, there are good days and there are some not so good days, but it's been a very, very good journey so far to spend time with him and learn from him and just, discussing wine in general. It's been a very good experience.
Jan, in terms of working with Nicky, the journey of discovery, is there a big difference in terms of the wine that's being made today and the way it's being made versus when you first started out in Kanonkop all those years ago?
Well, wine of course is first a mirror of place. Secondly, a mirror of plants, and then obviously a very small peep in the mirror of peoples. So, and the reason why I mentioned place is translocation of place is impossible. So if you're in winemaking on a particular place, then the biggest challenge, you have your preferences and you have opinions, but in the end, where the wine grape feels at home, that's where it will give off its best. And if you can pay attention to that, then you've got it.
It's a very poetic and philosophical evening on Dan Really Likes Wine, which is not unusual with Jan. In terms of the wine that we're making, Nicky, and the styles that we have, we talk about place there with Jan, but the style that you then apply to the terroir, to the grapes that you have, do you feel that there's a bit of a shift at the moment? Is wine heading in a new or different direction, or are things staying fairly constant?
No, it's been quite a shift at Vriesenhof over the last 10 years. We've changed some of the styles to fit the market more, especially when we get to the Callisto. You'll notice that because today's consumer is one of those that wants to be satisfied now. There aren't many, unless you're a connoisseur, that actually ages wines for longer than 2 or 3 years. So in that respect, you have to adjust your style of winemaking to fit the new consumer. But at the end of the day, the main focus is to stay true to place. So we don't want to shift too much away from what has been done before. We're just tweaking it a little bit to get it a bit more mainstream and in line with what people are drinking.
Well, the wine we're drinking this evening, we'll see how that reflects your thoughts. So the first of them is the Vriesenhof Chardonnay. I'd like to say a quick hello to Hannes Delport, who says, hi, Dan, here from Portugal. So one of our international viewers. Hannes, great to have you on, and hope things are going well in the Iberian Peninsula. The Chardonnay that we're starting with, Jan Boland's comment, I think it was Mike Ratcliffe, probably a month or two ago, saying that he felt the next big thing out of Stellenbosch was going to be Chardonnay, and I've put a similar question to a number of Stellenbosch winemakers since then. It's not that Stellenbosch has never been making Chardonnay, but do you get the sense that the general quality of Chardonnay is coming into its own, and that we're seeing just better and better Chardonnays out of Stellenbosch at the moment?
Well, definitely, yes. I mean, you know, even guys in Davis University says to say Chardonnay is a great grape variety is a little like saying Michelangelo was a great artist. True indeed, but also a great injustice. Because of if you think about Chardonnay as a grape variety, of the 1,300 grape varieties that's available, there's no other grape that can produce champagne like it, can produce Chablis, Steely, and Lean like it. More opulent than Puligny Montrachet, it's quite hard. More peachy like Meursault, even more so. And if you think about South Africa and Stellenbosch, it's quite interesting. We're not rated as we're a Cabernet country, but I mean, for the last couple of years, between 8 and 9 out of the top 10 Chardonnays were all coming from Stellenbosch. There must be a reason for it.
Well, let's see what that reason might be from your winemaker. Nikki, in terms of making this Chardonnay, we're drinking the 2018. What sort of style were you looking for, and what are we getting out of this particular wine?
So the 2018 Chardonnay is a barrel fermented Chardonnay. Small difference is we used to ferment straight in the barrel, but now I start my ferments in the tank, just to get it a bit cooler before it goes into barrel. And my wood regime has changed a bit, so it's less oaked than it used to be. So we're trying to get the fruit up front to try and keep the intrinsic characteristics of Chardonnay coming through without the oak dominating it. So I think that's one of the things that you find in the 2018 Chardonnay. You do have a little bit of oak on the nose, but when you drink it and you taste it, it's definitely the fruit first before the oak plays any impact.
Yeah, that's. I think there are a lot of people who are being won back to Chardonnay by the fact that the days of being hit in the mouth by a plank of wood are largely behind us, which I think is very welcome, because it does the grape a lot more justice. Is there a favorite style of wine, Jan, over the years? Is there a particular grape? So if you're celebrating a Rugby World Cup victory on your couch, or you've got some mates around for a bribe, what comes out first from the Jan Boland Coetzee cellar?
Well, I've got a lot of Chardonnay in my cellar. I mean, we had the 89 the other evening, which was really terrific. And I've already explained to you what the guys in Davis says. I think the understanding of man and the understanding of nature of man is the most important. As Nikki has explained, originally we used the wood to make Chardonnay. Now we're using the fruit to make the Chardonnay. Because we had very little Chardonnay, or almost nothing, until the 80s, towards the end of the 80s, beginning 90s. So our better wines, you know, the things that bears the fruit, they're now old enough to really produce decent fruit. And that helps the quality of the wine a lot.
It was a slightly loaded question, Jan, because I thought I knew what the answer would probably be, and because that answer is directly linked to a wonderful example of international criminality that had you and a guy called Dani de Vet on the top of the Interpol and FBI lists for some time, as you snuck Chardonnay over some borders and got it into South Africa. For people who don't know the story of your wonderful, if slightly illegal, contribution to the South African wine industry, remind us about how you brought Chardonnay to South Africa.
Well, obviously, I went to work in Beaune or in Burgundy. Beaune is the place where Chardonnay and Pinot is the only grape varieties in Burgundy. And I tasted quite a lot when I arrived, and then eventually I find the vineyard. Then while working there, I marked some plants, and friends were coming from London to visit, so they took some along. Guys came to Germany to do lectures at nuclear business. I put some sticks into his wife's bag to give to Dame Bailey. And then obviously I sent some in a chocolate box from Belgium to Dani. And I brought some back in my son's, what do you call it, pants,
Diapers.
You know?
Diapers. Say diapers.
Diapers.
Diapers, yeah.
I brought some back in the diapers. My daughters actually carried it. You must ask them. They can still tell the story. I screamed at them and said, "Move the bags. Make if it's light, man. Make if it's light. There's only paper in it."
Well, I'm glad to hear that the smuggling was a family business and you got the kids into it nice and early. It brought Chardonnay to South Africa, and we're very, very grateful for it. And it does give a wonderful story to both your wine legend and that of Vriesenhof as well. And I'm really glad we got to try some of the Chardonnay today, because it's drinking delightfully. Although, as you suggested, Jan, by drinking some 89 the other day, it's yet another South African Chardonnay that's only going to benefit with a fair heft of time. So I've got a second bottle of this, which I shall keep and maybe open in 10 years' time and see how it's going. It's one of two wines we have to try today. That was the Chardonnay. The other is the Calista. Now, when you speak to Jan, there are a few things you know will always happen. One is that he'll be wearing shorts. He's the only person in South Africa who doesn't actually own a pair of trousers. This has been proven. And he'll also insist that his English is not very good, and then rattle off poetry and philosophy, as he's been doing for most of the show so far, and quite wonderfully at that. And he'll tell you that his English sounds a bit like Greek, which might be linked to the name of this particular wine. It's the red blend for which Vriesenhof is so well known and is so proud. It is the Calista. Tokalo Kiarason. I'll have to get my wife to translate that for me, unless I can get you to do it. Jan, break into some Greek for me. Tell me the story behind the name of the Calista and that little motto beneath it.
Well, to be quite honest, I was looking for a name that you can pronounce in Afrikaans and English. So I practiced a lot, and it seems that Calista worked quite well. And the previous owner of the she was doing translation work for the television, and she came up with this Greek word Calista. And then I also asked her, but if I make now a decent Chardonnay one day in future, what can I call it? And she says Calisto. So Calisto means the most beautiful, and Calista means the good and the beautiful. So now it's only I that only myself that's still ugly. So the rest is beautiful.
I think we'll agree to disagree there. You're a striking man, Mr. Coetzee, with some very, very striking wine. Tell us a little bit about this blend, Nikki. I see there's some Cab Sauvignon, some Cab Franc as well, which is making a rousing return to form across South Africa as a single varietal as well as in blends. What goes into this? And not dissimilar to our earlier question, is it a changing space, or do you keep this on a very strict formula?
No, the only thing that at the moment that's relatively strict about is that we only use 3 cultivars, only Cabernet Sauvignon, Cabernet Franc, and Merlot, but their percentage is always different depending on the vintage. So the 2017 is one of the first ones where the Cabernet Franc is actually the dominant cultivar, because we were looking for that fruit component, that little bit of drinkability to the wine. And that's one thing that the Cab Franc gave us quite beautifully in 2017 is a lot of upfront fruit. And then the Cabernet Sauvignon and the Merlot just highlights certain aspects that you want, mouthfeel, longevity, lingering aftertaste, those sort of things. So it's always a bit of a fiddle, never a big one, but there's always a bit of experimentation going into the wines.
The rise of Cabernet Franc, like you were seeing in a number of blends. I think the Warwick trilogy is now being led by the Cab Franc. I've had a couple where in the past Cab Franc's played a quiet role in the background. It's now taking on a dominant role. Is that just a phase we're going through, or do you think South Africans are really starting to appreciate just what great wine Cabernet Franc can offer?
No, I think it's a bit of both. People are realizing what Cabernet Franc can do, and just the fact that it's got such a diverse aroma profile, depending on how you treat it in the vineyards and what you're looking for. I mean, you can either have the bright red fruit, or you can have the really spicy black pepper and a little bit of leather. So it's a nice workhorse in a blend. It can, lift up or dampen down different aspects of the wine. So I just think it's a really interesting cultivar that's finally showing its true potential under our conditions.
Beautiful.
Then you can take it back to the sanction days. Our Cabernet Franc planting material, which we imported in the 80s from Orange in France, was the worst ever you can dream of. So I planted some of that. And then I took them out, and then in the early 90s, I planted 7 different clones on seven rootstocks, so I had 14 combinations. And the past 2 years or 3 years, we had the first crop from one single plant with a better fruit of all those vines. So plant material, and that's why I mentioned plant when I started in the beginning. Plant and place where the grape feel its home. It's really, it'll still have a changing memory from vintage to vintage, but you get a lot from it. As Nikki said, the spiciness, the fruitiness from the Cab Franc, and under our conditions seems to be really exciting. So plant material is also very important.
I certainly agree with you on that. As you say, vital, but I throw people in there as well, and the people who bring those together to make this fabulous wine, and you two are terrific examples. Before we let you both go, one last question for you each, starting with you, Nikki. In terms of where we sit, both as a wine industry general, the estate in particular, for Vriesenhof, where do you see you going in the next 5 years? What would you like to be throwing our way? What can we excitedly anticipate from you over the next stretch?
Well, we'll be hoping to boost the Calista a bit more and make it really the showcase for Vriesenhof. And also another thing that would be quite exciting is our own Grenache vineyards coming to the fore, and we're moving that into the main lineup as a single varietal. So these sort of things are quite exciting to be playing around with.
And we benefit from the results. Calista, if you haven't tried it, I think it really has become one of South Africa's iconic red blends, and with good reason. And I'm a bit of a Cabernet Franc groupie, so I'm even more enamored with it than I was already. Jan Boland, we've got a couple of photos of you in your heyday, which we can flash up going back to the rugby days. So there we go, cracking hairstyle there, Jan Boland, looking very cutting edge. And I'd like to ask you, as we go back to the rugby, give us a double memory here. which is the rugby match, or look at that, tearing away, about probably scoring a hat-trick in the first 10 minutes there. If I could take you back, one particular rugby match, Jan, that you remember with special fondness, one that really meant a lot to you, and then at the end of that game, if you'd had the pick of a single wine from any vintage that you've made, going back to Kanonkop in 1968, what is that one wine that for you sits above all others?
Well, there's obviously more than one, because every vintage has got its own. Every vintage has got its own memory. And it's an ever-changing memory in the bottle, of course, where the wine is getting more complex and more complex. I would love to say that 73 Kanonkop Cab, 78 Kanonkop Cab, 89 Vriesenhof Cab, and 2003 Calista is most probably the wines that, if there's cheese on the table, that I'll use. And obviously, if it's food, then I'll have Pinot Noir. My favorite rugby, yes. Like, I think in 1967, we played against Ikes in the varsity. And they were so-called very, very, very strong. The youths back or forwards, and we almost wiped them at Kutsenberg. Olaf Henner was still playing at the lock. So, but I can't say the words that he said afterwards. It's not allowed on TV.
Oh dear. Well, I'm a little sad that that's the one you've chosen, Jan, because I went to UCT and I'm a proud Ike, but I spent most of my rugby career watching very large Stellenbosch players run over very small UCT players. So it's no surprise that was the result.
Yeah, but you must remember there was still the Boer War, so we still got quite a score to settle.
I think you might have made up for a fair bit of it with some of those hits on poor Ike Tigers over the years. Jan, it's always a pleasure to talk. It feels far too short, so I think we're gonna, if we can borrow some more of your English, have to get you back on the show again soon and relive some more memories and some great reflections. And lovely to have some time with you, and also with you too, Nikki. Two great vintages of two terrific wines. The Chardonnay story, I think, so important. Because you're just really good at making Chardonnay, but also you've got the Chardonnay thief behind you who contributes so much to it. And this Calista, Jan referencing the 2003, it's been going for so many years. It's really found its way into the hearts of South African wine drinkers, and this 17 as good as any of the Calistas I've had. So thank you for two great bottles of wine. Thank you for some sparkling company and some wonderful memories, and a little poetry and philosophy as well there. And look forward to catching up with you both again soon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a nice evening.
There we go. Jan Boland Coetzee. Basically, if you take Lionel Messi today in football, that was Jan Boland in rugby in the 60s and 70s. Phenomenal player, massive star, and did it all while making wine. Kanonkop, and now at Vriesenhof, where we sampled that Chardonnay from, and the Calista. Terrific red blend, one you need to mark down if you haven't had it as yet. So we said hello a little earlier to Hannes Delport from Portugal. I can see a man behind the Park Lane Hotel. Would have been there earlier this year, the Hong Kong Sevens. Hopefully back again next year, Luke. Good to see you watching, and thank you for joining us. Right, so Vriesenhof is wrapped up a little down the road and out towards the direction of Franschhoek. And just before you get there, you come to a rather large estate called Boschendal. Boschendal is an extraordinary place at the moment. Set aside the wine, which we'll get to in just a moment. There's an array of restaurants and delis. They got some of the best mountain biking in the area. Wonderful collection of cottages to go and stay at. I stayed there a little earlier on. It was middle of last year, I think. Had a terrific time. They've got Matt Stevens, who lost the Rugby World Cup final to South Africa in 2007. Very important to remind him of that. every time you see him. Matt now working down at Boschendal as well, and some of the best kids facilities in the country. Weekend out at Boschendal is superb. But for me, it's still headlined by the wine, and they've made fabulous wine for many, many years. Lots of fans all over the world. And the wine we try today is wine I've been looking forward to since it arrived last week, mostly because the bottles just look so big and appealing. And having had enough of their wine before, I know what's inside will be the same. So let's head over to Jacques, who is the winemaker at Boschendal. Jacques, a very good evening.
Good evening. Thanks for having me here. After Jan Boland using his amazing English, we previously said, he's going to use it in self-defense. I think I'm more going to use it in self-defense, but I quite enjoyed that with his poetry and so forth. But yeah, Dan, thank you very much. Thanks for having me here.
That's an absolute pleasure. I always love listening to Jan Boland. He prefaces everything by assuring you that he can't speak English and then rattles off like the true orator that he is, and very passionately so. And it's a passion that speaks to everybody I talk to on this show, people who've got into the wine industry. Some make some money out of it, some don't, but everybody's in it. Does it because they just absolutely love being part of this broader wine family. What was it for you? What shone a light on the path to winemaking and said, Jacques Viljoen, this might be for me?
Look, I love nature. Growing up in Stellenbosch, in fact, I used to date a girl at varsity, and it's Hempie de Tooi's daughter. So also quite used to be at Alto and Annandale at that stage. So obviously, growing up in Stellenbosch, you're bound to date somebody that's her father's either a winemaker or in the wine industry itself. But I think all in all, at the end of the day, if I just can take it back to a very, very significant memory, I remember at preschool, we visited some farms or wineries as a 8-stappie, and I still remember Coetzee de Tooy. I can't remember the cellar at that stage, but I was still very small, and I tasted my first little bit of Sauvignon Blanc juice or must, grape must, and that was just like phenomenal. So every year I just couldn't wait just to see and to taste. And then obviously growing up in the winelands itself, you mentioned mountain biking on Boschendal, but just growing up in the wine industry, and I love nature, being out there, spending a lot of time on different terroirs, different terrains, and I just love South Africa. So for me, winemaking became quite a versatile job. Obviously, I can't really call it a job. I should rather call it a passion, because it's being out there in the vineyards, crafting the wines from different terroirs, obviously blending, tasting. Something else that I love is just it's almost like giving presents to people, and wine is giving a present to other guys. They're seeing you guys enjoying the wines as well. That's phenomenal. So I think that's what crafted it. Obviously, my father and my parents are also from the wine industry itself as well. So we grew up with wine in the house, and it's a beautiful living product. So just putting it out there. So yeah. I don't know if I answered your question. I waffled away.
Most thoroughly, and I think your answered it in more than just words. The passion is written large across you, which is always lovely to see. It is no surprise, because you do need a lot of passion to get through a job that is a lot more challenging than some people think. It's not just sitting and tasting wine all day. That's my job. Your job is actually doing something a little more proper, and it's also a job that has a fair amount of scale, because Boschendal is not a small operation. Give us a sense of the volumes of wine you're making, and what the challenge is in not just producing such big volumes, but maintaining the quality that you do.
Well, I think what is special about Boschendal is that obviously we've realized that various wines, different directions, different terroirs in South Africa itself. So Boschendal, should I mention, is not, we are also sourcing grapes. So we've got a very, very close relationship with our growers. So depending on the wines, as you know, we've got a beautiful appellation series where we've actually secured some property in the Elgin region as well. just mainly for our Pinot Noirs, Elgin Chardonnays, some beautiful Sauvignon from that side as well. And I must say some beautiful red varietals from that side as well. But then also we've heavily invested in Stellenbosch itself, but also in the Helderberg region, where we're focusing a lot on the border varietals and some beautiful Syrah, which we're going to taste just now as well, from that area. So foothills of Helderberg, but then so we are really focusing on some of the top areas of the Cape Coastal region, and it all depends on the various the direction that we are pinpointing wine towards. So these days, obviously, as you know, it's all about terroir and terrain, and the various aspects, and all of these things play such a huge role. So gone is the days that you are focusing just on a very, very specific area. You look at your wine and how you want to craft it. So I think if you can identify the perfect terroir for a specific wine, for a specific range, you can really, you are winning 80% of the battle. So yeah, just the size of Boschendal, we do up to 3,500 tons at Boschendal itself, of which I would say 20%, if I'm just going to give like a broad breakdown, 20% MCC Cup Classique, which we've just finished the bottling, a 4-week bottling on Cup Classique there. And then I would just in general 40% red and 40% white wines. But then people can say, yes, but it's a massive operation. But then I want to say, wines that we're going to taste tonight, we can go right down to Grand Syrah, which is a 2,500 liter food rate at the end of the day, crafting up to 300,000 liter 1685 Chardonnay top end blend, which got 90 points at Tim Atkin, for instance. I just want to mention that. So I think our focus is on our terroirs, and obviously we can't do everything. So we've got a very, very close relationship with our growers. They are very, very important to us. So I believe it's a two-way street for the winery, for Boschendal itself, but also for our grower. We must look after them and to achieve our end goal, because what we are standing for at Boschendal is for premium. We've got a premium strategy, and I think that's the only way forward. That's the way we think. That's the way we put our philosophy out there, is making premium wines from perfect sites. So I just want to give credit to Stefan Hubert, viticulturist, group winemaker, to Heine Nel, viticulturist, who's also helping us to focus and to making sure that we are securing the best possible vineyards and making sure that we're doing the right timing practices to get the right balance and to get the right fruit in the cellar. So working very closely with them. It's like I said, 80% of what you do is out there. I want to say 90%, but there's a lot of other things as well, like marketing and so forth.
Yeah, 80% what you do in the cellar, 20% marketing, and 10% good maths, and then you should be absolutely fine. Just before we jump into the wines, you've already referenced the Syrah. We're going to try that in just a second. Let's talk quickly about a couple of wines we don't have here today. You've got your Nicholas, which I know you get a lot of great reviews for, and you're very proud of. And then you also, did I see there was a 94 point from Mr. Atkin for one of your wines?
Yes, that's the Elgin Chardonnay as part of the Appellation series. Phenomenal wine. That is one of the reasons why we've secured some property in Elgin itself. It's just I want to say it's like Europe and South Africa. We all know. Often I take my adventure motorbike and I just drive through Elgin, just through those sites and the vineyards, and yes, it reminds me of Lord of the Rings. It's just phenomenal terroirs, and we're just getting some beautiful Chardonnay from that area, and beautiful. The other day I did a tasting with someone, and where we only mentioned the minerality, and then afterwards it's the fruit coming through as well. So very true to terroir and terrain. I think it's a wine that really appeals to the European palate as well, and it's done really well there. So very pleased, very blessed. I know that Tim has also always liked that wine as well, and And so it's always nice to just to hear from the guys in the industry, to get that positive criticism, and to keep on crafting, chipping away at it to make some beautiful wines. And like I said, really capturing the vintage, but also capturing the terroir in a bottle. And I think that's what we've achieved with that Appellation Series Chardonnay, and really putting it out there what that area is all about.
It's a terrific, terrific wine. I'll be getting hold of some as soon as I can, and we'll be looking, as I say, at some more of that Tim Atkin report next week through the course of the shows. A couple of quick messages. Joanne Nell saying hello, Jacques, from Joe at DGB, one of your great admirers within the greater company. And Jacques Roux, another mate of yours, watching on. And cheers. So thanks for watching, guys. I'm sure you are enjoying it. It's Dan Likes Wine, presented by Pick and Pay, and with some wine from Boschendal. Jacques is our winemaker. Let's go into that wine. And if I look at both of the bottles that you've had sent up to me, if Cluedo got reworked with the weapons as all wine items, this would be absolutely brilliant. This weighs about 4 kilograms. It is an immense bottle of wine, and it's not done accidentally, because the moment you pick it up and you look at it, you just feel a sense of presence. You feel the weight to it that says there's a serious bottle of wine in here.
Yeah, look, that bottle, it's the heritage bottle. It's specifically crafted for or made for Boschendal, for the heritage range. And yeah, if I can put a bit of humor to it, these days we love our mountain biking, going out there. We love our CrossFit. So if we need some training and putting some muscle in it, we just lift a few Grand Syrah or Black Angus boxes. But yeah, no, it's a special bottle. I think we're really trying to pull all stops on the heritage collection, Black Angus, Grand Syrah. And like I said, so the presentation, that's where it starts as well. You know, it's just a presentation I would like to think is phenomenal. I love it. You know, you can maybe go onto the negative of the bottle is quite heavy, but like I said, we need something to train with after they're empty. And but yeah, so with these wines, with the heritage collection, thank goodness for proper marketing, and for the marketing guys also investing heavily. And we do know that obviously at the end of the day, for the connoisseur, it's all about what's inside the bottle, and that should tell the story. But I do believe that it makes an impression, and I love that. It's something that you would that I would want in my collection, and yeah.
No, it is great. Although it is a big bottle of a big wine, there's still an elegance and a restraint to it. You've got my favorite element of all wines, which is some nice balance. And at 5 years old, still I think some way to go with it. It's one of two wines that feature the same grape. The second is the Black Angus, and the name there, people might raise an eyebrow. Well, why are you calling that? That refers to some of your locals at Boschendal, doesn't it?
Yeah. So just once again, so the bottle is big and bold, and but I just want to say, so at the end of the day, my whole winemaking philosophy is being classic, true to terroir, true to style, and I would like to make timeless, elegant, seamless wine, and with natural analysis, quite fresh, you know. So it's gone as the days where wines are over extracted, big, concentrated, and too much oaking. So for me, it's all about balance. It's all about what you do in the in the vineyards itself. But yeah, just going back to our locals, the Black Angus cattle, some phenomenal. I don't want to say little guys walking around here, because they're quite big, but they're majestic and they're beautiful, and it's part of the farm. So, and that's once again, I think that from my point of view, I just think we did it right there. Black Angus, the name, often I do a tasting, and if people just see the bottle with the name itself, being a South African, loving my meat and some beautiful T-bone steaks or whatever, you know, the Black Angus, it just rings well, as you know, to my ear, to the ear. The other day I went to a farm, Oakhurst, and one of my favorite photos where I had some cattle walking in the background, and I had a nice bottle of milk and cheese and a Black Angus steak and my bottle of Black Angus. It just reminded me of what we are really trying to do at Boschendal, that whole farm to table type vibe. So so Black Angus, that is a wine that is Shiraz led, but I'm sure you're going to ask me about the wine just now. And so like I said, Shiraz is the main varietal, and I would like to think that we often say we are what we eat, and the bloodline of the Black Angus wine is the Shiraz.
It's wine that has many fans. Chris Sneyman is one of them. Exceptional wines from Boschendal. Thanks, Jacques. The sign in the background betrays just where Chris might come from. And I think that's actually that might be a photograph of Matt Stevens there. I'm not 100% sure that he's got. Philip Duplessis, Next Level Wine, says Philip. Another great fan, both of terrific wine and of excellent bow ties. Looking very sharp there, Mr. Duplessis. And Henriette Moyer, thanks, Jacques. Fantastic wines. Simple assessment of what is some great wine. You've mentioned the bloodline. We know it's Shiraz. It's, I think, closing in on just short of 70% of this. But you've also got, as well as some Cabernet Franc, which you had in the Calista a little earlier, you've got some salt and pepper in there as well. You've got a bit of Petit Verdot to finish it off.
Yeah, look, so this specific wine, if I can just give you a quick briefing on the Black Angus, it's I must say, it is my favorite wine to make at Boschendal. It's a wine that I actually dream about at night. It is phenomenal sights from the Helderberg. Everything in this wine, this whole wine is about the Shiraz. So when you taste the wine, when you nose the wine, everything that I do in the cellar, all the selection of different pockets in these specific vineyards is about the Shiraz. It's a very, very specific vineyard. We farm this vineyard one bunch per shoot. It's a very special terroir in the Helderberg, very close to Cordoba farm. It's on a south-facing slope. And the Shiraz here is that we really try to pull out all stops. So whatever is good for the vintage, we try to do the timing right, the correct vineyard practices. And what we are getting from the Shiraz is we're getting some beautiful, beautiful black pepper, mulberry, black cherry-like flavors. And what we found with the Black Angus, because it's a non-conventional blend, so obviously there's some Bordeaux varietals in the wine as well. So it's like a symphony orchestra. Every single varietal, shouldn't scream that it's the top, but it should just enhances, it just backs the Syrah. So when I look at the Bordeaux varietals for a year, backing the Shiraz, it shouldn't stand out. It should just add a salt and pepper, like you said, or a different dimension, just supporting the wine, just supporting the Syrah, and to support the structure, to give it nice ageability. And that's what we're trying to achieve with this wine. So after the vineyard or the pocket selection of the Syrah, the Petit Verdot, and the other Bordeaux varietals, we would do the fermentation in the cellar itself. We would age Syrah in 500-liter barrels and some of the Bordeaux varietals in 300-liter barrels. But then after this, we will go back and do a reselection and really go and taste. And we're not driven by volumes. We're small volumes. It's all about the quality. It's all about the philosophy of the premium strategy. So after making up the blend, after about 16 months, it will go down to it. We will blend and we will age for a further few months in foudre as well, just for the wine to marry. With the Heritage Collection, something that I can mention that's a little bit of a winemaking tweak is we take it to one of my lecturers, Lofty Ellis, and then he would usually just look under a microscope just to make sure that everything is 100% perfect and there's no bugs that will spoil the wine or whatever. And so we would put it really, we won't really move it from the foudre, and then we would bottle it straight out of that. And I would like to say we use a flycatcher or just a very, very coarse filter, just to make sure that we're not stripping, we're not moving, we're making sure that we're not picking up any dissolved oxygen or anything in the wine, because these wines are are made to be able to, that you can buy it, you can enjoy them now, but we want them to last 10, 15, 20 years. You should open them up, take them out of your cellar, and it should still be phenomenal. So that's the philosophy behind the heritage range. Yeah.
The challenge, of course, with that, and it's not an unusual challenge, is you've got to hang on to those wines and resist the temptation to drink them straight away. But the investment in time and the restraint is well worth it. Just before we do say goodbye to you, Jacques, you mentioned limited numbers. I'm having a look at the two bottles I've got here. My Grand Syrah is bottle 1970, and I've got bottle 305 of the Black Angus. Just how limited is this run? How many bottles are you making of these two wines?
Look, the Grand Syrah is basically capped at 1 foudre, 2,500 liters. So that is obviously Grand Syrah is from a very, very specific vineyard, and that's only the best we'll do there. So that's even more of a premium selection than the Black Angus, where we really go. It's from the same vineyard, but it's a special pocket of Syrah in that vineyard. So that is usually, we do about 5 to 6 tons per year, depending on the year, but ending up usually with a barrel selection of about 2,500 liters. And that's basically where the Grand Syrah is capped. But Black Angus, it will vary, or not vary, but it's at the moment, it's about around about 13,000 liters. It's basically 2 5,000 liter foudres and a 2,500 liter foudre. I'm a winemaker, and math doesn't make sense, but that's more or less where it's standing. But it all depends from year to year. We only want to put out the best there. It depends on the vineyards, it depends on the vintage. So yeah, so limited numbers. 2015, I think, was only a 7,500. That was basically it has grown, but that's basically where we were. Yeah.
Translation: if you can find some, get your hands on it, because there's not too much going around, and there are lots of people chasing after it. Amongst them, Shirley Bester van Beek. Absolutely love the juicy Black Angus, says Shirley. And Shirley, thanks for all your help in setting things up today, along with Kirsten Rennick-Hopwood. Jacques, thank you very much indeed. It's been a delight catching up with you. Hopefully next time is down at Boschendal itself. My kids love it, as do I. And yeah, last visit was a real treat, and I'm sure the next one will be as well. So keep having fun making wine, enjoy the mountain biking, enjoy the operation there. You're clearly loving what you're doing, and you're great at it. So it's a terrific combination. I see Jacques Viljoen is mentioning 2,500 litres for 3,000 bottles of the Grand Syrah. So just confirming those numbers there that Mr. Viljoen has given us. Enjoy the rest of the evening. I'm going to head off and enjoy dinner at Marble. I'll see if they've got some Boschendal on the wine list, and maybe a little Friesenhof. Have a great night, and thank you so much for joining us, Jacques.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. Really enjoyed it. And enjoy your evening at Marble.
I will indeed. So there we go. Jacques Viljoen, winemaker at Boschendal, introducing us to the Grand Syrah and the Black Angus, both from 2015, almighty bottles with wine to match inside. So that wraps us up for another evening on Dan Really Likes Wine, presented by Pick n Pay. Big thank you to Jacques. Big thank you too to the team from Vriesenhof, who the guys who give us that Callista, as well as the Chardonnay, to Jan Boland Coetzee and to Nikki Claessens. Very grateful indeed for your time today. Remember, if you're not already a member of the Pick n Pay Wine Club, it's absolutely free of charge. Send your smart shopper number through to 36775. And remember, 3 times the smart shopper points on all wines, and 20% off a selection of 10 every month. And there are some great wines there indeed. Some great wines to look forward to. I played some golf yesterday with Gavin Ivers from the Pick n Pay team. He's responsible for quality control. There's lots of testing, and promises me we've got some exciting stuff to look forward to from the Pick n Pay wine team over the next few months. Plenty of excitement on Dan Really Likes Wine as well. Monday, it's JC from Creation, and it's Bareen from Tesla. We also have the next edition of the South African Wine Tribe coming out next week. And if I'm not mistaken, we've got a rather cool competition on the horizon with Anthony Rupert Wines and some Syrah leading up to National Heritage Day on the 24th of September. And one last announcement, we'll sneak in a word or two with her on Monday. Ina from the Chenin Blanc Association. We're going to be presenting a very special broadcast next Thursday at 12 o'clock. And that is the Chenin Blanc Association Standard Bank Top 10 Chenin Blanc Awards, as we nominate 10 of the very best, not just in South Africa, but I think all over the world, given South Africa's Chenin making ability. So lots to come next week. Right now, I'm going to shoot off to Marvel and join David Higgs for some dinner. Thank you for joining us. Keep sending in all your messages, and thank you for watching. Thank you for your support. It makes it a very, very rewarding space indeed. Enjoy the rest of your evening. I'll see you next week. Good night.